Yeah, I'm good. What an opportunity for Irish fans, though, to be able to go and play on Premier League pitch. Great opportunity.
Here's the thing, we just had Kevin Kilbane count down his top 10 favourite stadiums. I'm not going to ask you off the cuff for your top 10, but apart from Old Trafford, right, which I assume is a given, is there some ground that as a kid you were like, yeah, I really want to play there, and then you got there and it was like, wow?
Yeah, I think the tradition of Villa Park, you know, they used to have the semi-finals there, and then probably because I was at West Brom and you had Villa Park just down the road from us and it was the derby game. But there was always a good atmosphere there, and then it's always been quite a lucky ground for me, you know, with United in the Cups. We always did well there. And then United in the league, we always got good results at Aston Villa.
I'm a Villa fan, so I was like, wondering where this is going. Right? Yeah.
You should have told me that before I started. But yeah, but then now that these new stadiums have come through, I think that's great for the game, you know, stadiums like the Emirates and that. I think it's great for football.
They're not quite the same experience, though, I presume, for players. Like, so when Kev was talking about Lansdowne Road, he said the old Lansdowne Road, not the Aviva as it is now. It's a bowl, it's perfect, everybody has perfect seats. The singing section is the singing section, whereas in the old days, the terraces were mental.
Yeah, well, what you had is, you know, some of the stadiums were right on top of the pitch. And so you could hear, you know, things that the fans are shouting. The pitch doesn't seem as big. Where in today's game, you know, with these new stadiums, it's wide open. You know, and I don't think it's as intimidating for the away players to what it used to be.
No, I mean, clearly there were reasons why the stadiums needed to be built that way for safety and for fan security and all that kind of stuff, and nobody wants to go back to that, but certainly the atmosphere is different and the experience of playing is different.
I think that's the thing. It takes away a little bit of the atmosphere. You know, it's not as fierce because of them being a lot further away from you. But I do think it's good for, you know, health and safety, which is a big issue in everything in today's sort of life. But no, the atmosphere has definitely gone out the game to a certain degree at the new stadiums.
Do you think that the stadiums is the sole reason for that?
I think it is. Plus as well, the sitting down now. I don't think you get into as much of a singing tone when you're sitting down. When you're standing up and you're next to your mates and that, you know, one of them starts singing and then everybody joins in, they jump up and down.
Yeah.
And it's a bit more of a banter, and that's why you got a far better atmosphere.
I was going to wait until the end because we've got a lot of questions about this, but there was actually one that's very relevant. So Alan Dodrell says, I was at Main Road for the 85 replay when I was 11 years of age. It was my first Manchester United game. The atmosphere was electric. Amazing memories. Manchester United were superb. 2 questions. What do you remember of that night? And should the FA Cup semi-finals be played away from Wembley at neutral venues?
Yeah, I like it that it's neutral venues. You know, that one was a great one for me because, you know, we won the game 4 and I scored the last goal. It was a great night because Oldham had given us a real good game in the first game. But, you know, going down to Wembley, I just think it takes away from a little bit of the tradition of the FA Cup final now that... you know, it's got to be special to go to a cup final where, because the semi-finals are played at Wembley now, I just think it takes it away from it a little bit.
When you were playing at that era, did you feel that there was a sense of moving away from tradition? I mean, you were a British record transfer player at the time for $1.5 million. That was only 2 years after Trevor Francis was sold for $1 million. So clearly it increased by 50% the British record transfer fee in the space of only 2 years. We're seeing things obviously on a very different scale at the moment, moving just as quickly in terms of transfer record fees at the moment. And of course you were there from the Division 1 into the Premier League era. So I guess there's a parallel, but as I say, on a different scale from your era playing for Manchester United, where football was moving into a completely new age.
Yeah, well, I didn't really think about it until, you know, it was mentioned, you know, about how quickly it went up from Trevor Francis to myself. But then I think it actually stood for about 8 years, you know, the transfer record then, which surprised me because I had never really thought of it. Because when I first went to United, you're a bit sort of apprehensive because I'd come through the ranks at West Brom, the expectations and the transfer fees not hanging around your neck. But then you go into Man United and you sort of expect more from yourself, and so you maybe try that a little bit too hard, and you don't play your natural game. So it took me, I think, the first year to actually settle down and just play my natural game.
Is that something that you as a manager then were able to impart on the big signings that you made? Relax, it's going to be okay. We've bought you because of who you are, not because of somebody that the fans want you to be.
Yeah, I mean, I can always remember Gary Pallister when he came to United. You know, I said to Polly, because he was asking me, he's going, Rob, what expectations, because he was the most expensive defender, record fee. And Big Pally found it a little bit of a burden because he was exactly the same. He'd come through the Middlesbrough ranks, didn't really know what it was all about. And I said to him, look, big man, just relax and enjoy your game and just play your natural game. Polly did that. Transfer fees had really gone on then when I was manager at Middlesbrough. So when I brought Juninho, he just loved football that much that it didn't affect him one little bit because he just went out and played. And then Ravanelli was a very experienced player. He just won the Champions League with Juve. And so he didn't really have anything to prove, and so Rav just got on with it and just performed how he performed.
Yeah, which was a record-breaking number of goals.
Yeah,
not bad.
Yeah, he was a good player. You know, a very skillful player. Worked really hard in training. Great finisher. The only thing with Rav, which I tried to get through to him, is that just try and help some of the younger boys who were coming through the ranks at that time. Because it was all more or less about his own performance, and I said, with your ability and your knowledge and experience of the game, you could help some of the young boys who are coming through in your position.
We had the trophy in a little bit earlier, and we were looking through, and there's full sections of it that are basically, there's 7, there's one which is 6 Manchester United and 1 Chelsea in the middle of it. So people who have grown up in the Premier League era, like Owen a bit, are conditioned to believe in Manchester United as this title-winning machine. But for the longest period of your career, Manchester United were undergoing, by their terms, a slump. Was there a point where you thought it was never going to happen, that you weren't actually going to be part of a Manchester United team that won the league?
Oh yeah, especially when you get into your mid-30s, which I was. You know, and so you're thinking, is this ever going to happen? Because the year before we were really successful in the cup competitions, and we had a backlog of games, and we were playing the last 2 weeks of the season. We played 4 games a week, which was just too much, and we got a few injuries where we'd only lost 2 league games that season. In the last 8 games, we lost 4. So it had a toll on us. You know, but the one thing I love about the Premier League is that the Premier League came in and we won the first one. And so nobody can ever take that away from you. But yeah, United, you know, now everybody at the club knows how important it is to sort of win the title, because Alex Ferguson inbred that into the club. You know, and so the manager, Jose, he knows that it's really important for us to get back on track, you know, in the league. If it wasn't for Manchester City, I think everybody at Manchester United would be quite happy about the season. You know, we would be sitting top of the league if City hadn't had such an amazing season. You know, but they're setting the goalpost now, and you've got to achieve, when somebody wins the league, you've got to actually get to that level. And that's what Manchester United's aim's got to be in the summer, to try and get a few players in, motivate the players that they've got to try and compete with Manchester City next season, because we all know that Manchester City are going to win the Premiership this year.
Do you think that there's a difference now between the team-based goals of the early stages of the Premier League era, where the be-all and end-all was as a collective to win the Premier League, whereas now there is a lot of individual things on offer, whether it's financial or whether it's statistic-based stats, I guess, that people can go over? Whereas in your squad, it felt like the Premier League, the league championship was going to be the thing that you would all achieve as a collective, and to a certain extent there was sacrifices made for that. I mean, we were speaking about it earlier on, the Roy Keane signing, for example, and you pushed the signing of Roy Keane despite what impact that might have had on your own position in the squad.
Oh yeah, it's because as a club and a team, you want to win. Yeah, and you know, as an individual, you want to win things, but you can't win it as an individual. You've got to win it as a team. And you know, so for me, when we won the title the year before, the manager and some of his staff were having a cup of tea, and I was involved in that, and they were talking about Roy, and I just piped in when normally I would never say anything unless the manager asked my opinion, but I just said to him, I've played against him quite a few times, Gaffer, and he's nailed on. There's no danger I would not bring Roy Keane into the club. Like you say, it was a bit detrimental to me because then Ince and Keane sort of got into the midfield most of the time, but every now and again, if they were suspended or injured, the boss would throw me in then, or he'd actually play us as a three. And the one thing, when Ince, Keane and myself played all together, it wasn't that many times, but we never got beat as a team. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's got to be collective. And the one great thing about what happened then, the class of 92, all those young lads coming through, they knew what it was like to actually play together, win the FA Youth Cup, win the Central League or the Reserve League, you know, and they took that on board, and that's why they were very successful as well.
Yeah. We've had a load of questions come in for you. I just want to get to some of these pretty quickly. So, best midfield partner you ever played with, and the one player you would have loved to play with?
Gaza. You know, it's a difficult one for me to say because Paul Ince was a great player. Keane was obviously a great player. But Gaza was a little bit special from 1990 to 96. He could do things which other players couldn't particularly do. So for me, in that era, Gaza was the best midfield player I played with.
Not a bad answer. Is there any past or present Manchester United player that Bryan would like to see or think would be good enough to manage the club in the future?
To manage, it's a real difficult one because you know, you could be a great player, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be great at management. It's because it's just such a totally new role. But I think there's quite a few out there given the opportunity at a club like Manchester United. Because I look back at my own managerial career, and you look at, you know, I was at Middlesbrough, you're at West Brom, and when you look at those jobs and you're in the Premiership, you sort of haven't got the resources, especially for transfer fees, and especially the wage bill. If you're at a club like Manchester United, all of a sudden you're expected to win, and so you can buy better quality players, you can bring on board because of the wages, better quality players. So people like Brucey, Mark Hughes, you know, Gordon Strachan, lads who I played with, they would have potential of doing that, especially at a club like Manchester United, because like I say, the revenue gives you such a much better advantage.
What about Roy Keane?
Roy, I'm not so sure with Roy. I mean, he did really well when he first went to Sunderland, but then he's a really explosive character, and I'm not sure whether, you know, that explosiveness is a good sort of cocktail for being a manager, and that's why maybe he's doing really well with Martin O'Neill, because Roy can sort of do the coaching and help in that way, where Martin sort of like has that man management style with players.
Okay, the next one is best Manchester United player you played with.
Best Manchester United player, I've got to say Keane and Giggsy right alongside each other. The two of them were special players. That's why they won so much. both really mentally strong and determined characters to win things, and that's why they've got the records that they've got.
Last one for now. Who should Manchester United sign in the summer?
It's always a difficult one because you can see players who you're probably not going to get. But, you know, for me, if United could go in and get Harry Kane, that would be the one I'd go for.
What about Gareth Bale? Because there's an opportunity there, it looks like, for him.
Yeah, well, I think that could be an option for United because there's been rumours about Gareth leaving Real Madrid. But for me, it depends how much money that's going to be because he has had quite a few injury problems over the last year and a half, and you just wonder whether he's got to that age where, because of him being powerful and quick, you pick up injuries. So I just think United have got to be a little bit careful with that one.
Bryan, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us.
Lovely, thank you.